the first time I felt represented, I guess, around music and media, was probably when I discovered, well, like Chicano soul. I'm a first generation Texan, so every time talking to people from Mexico, which I always felt Mexican because all my family is Mexican, so talking to people from Mexico, they were like, "Oh no, you're not Mexican because you were born in Texas." I'm like, "Okay, I get it, but that's just not how I felt." When I discovered that there was people from Texas or Latin people who don't speak Spanish, even though I speak Spanish, but there's Latin people who don't speak Spanish creating music and identifying themselves like still Mexican, but then they tapped into that Chicano Texan culture. And I was like, oh man, these are like my people. That's how I started feeling represented. Like these are the people really driving a bunch of the stuff. But when you see them on spotlights, like that dude, Big Bad Bunny, who was just blowing up. It's crazy how big he is, but it's nuts. Like that's so awesome. Him being Latin, and he talks about it too.
You know, my family was more Americanized. I was more sixth generation, fifth generation Texan, and so a lot of my household, you know, we didn't really listen to a lot of Hispanic music. You know, it was more Chicago, Steely Dan. Growing up, being in band, of course, you know, playing trombone, the first thing I started listening to was like ska. There was not a lot of diversity in ska, and but it wasn't until there's a band in Houston that were all Hispanic, and you know, Los Carnales, and they've like now they've been around 27 years.
Wow.
But the first time I saw them was at a legendary venue that's not there in Houston anymore called Fitzgerald's, and I was playing with the band downstairs. It was a two-story, and then I went upstairs and I just saw these guys in zoot suits, and even though they looked like super old school, you know, they had like energy like punk rock. And you know, of course, when you're a kid, you know, you're just like, yeah, like it was so exciting. Accordion player at the time, a stand-up bass, and you know, Hispanics, and I was just like, what? You could do this with, like, you know, ska music. Like I was like, I thought it was all like this, but you know, and it made me tap into my cultural background. You know, my grandma, who, you know, she was 96. She never really pressured us into speaking Spanish. She wanted us to fit in, you know, just to fit in, because, you know, there was a lot of racism back then. I mean, still is, but, you know, they just wanted to be like everybody else. Because of Los Carnales, it's really made me tap into, you know, my culture from where I'm come from. But yeah, it's definitely inspired me to be like, whoa, there's a whole new world of music, and there's no rules about it, which is even cooler, because it's like these guys, they were Hispanic, they love punk rock, they love ska, and they're like, you know what, fuck it,
they love it all.
Let's do what we want to do, and that's what they did, and it really, and being in that band really has encouraged not just me, but I feel like the band to do that with our music, even though it's not the same styles, but we take everything from what we've grown up listening to into our music and putting into the package that we're playing today, you know.